It's June 27th at 6 o'clock at City Hall for the Common Council meeting. Media has been notified. Agenda's been posted. Clerk, call the roll call.
David Holt.
Here.
Stephen Jopek.
Here.
Eileen Daniel.
Here.
Carrie Michalowski.
Here.
Gerald Anderson.
Here.
Thomas Barnett.
Here.
Thomas Kelly.
Here.
Leanne Felton.
Here.
Chris Hannes.
Here. We have quorum. Pledge of allegiance. Going on to number 4, which is public comment. Ben Gauthier.
Good evening. My name is Ben Gauthier, president of Hodag Little League. I'm here tonight to update the city on the field renovation project down at Hodag Park that we began discussions on last year. Last year, some very generous community members approached the city and Little League about renovating the 2 smaller baseball diamonds down at Hodag Park. One of the donors reached out to a turf management company about a quote for the project. The quote we received back was around $85,000. At that time, we had $75,000 in pledged donations, and the Little League was going to cover the rest of the cost. Because this is city property, we had to come to an agreement with the city on how to proceed. Due to issues that took a while to resolve, we were not able to reach an agreement last year. We were able to reach an agreement with the city this spring in order to move ahead with the renovations. We went back to the turf management company and asked for a revised quote. The quote came back 2 weeks ago, and the price of the project had increased almost $50,000 to a total of $133,000. As of this moment, we no longer have the funds to be able to complete this project. We are going to be sending out letters to the community asking if anyone would want to donate to this project. Unless we can come up with the difference in cost in the next couple of weeks, this project will once again have to be put on hold. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank?
Thank you for having me. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Frank Schroyer. I'm the Conservation Associate for Northwoods Land Trust out of Eagle River. We're a private nonprofit organization whose mission is to promote the conservation of shorelands, woodlands, and wetlands here in the Northwoods. One of the areas that we protect is Humboldt Conifer Forest State Natural Area right here in town. Our primary objective on that property is to protect the conservation values the property has. We also currently allow public use on the property for silent sports such as hiking and snowshoeing. So I'm here today because I understand, based on previous agendas and meeting minutes I found online, there's been discussions to fine-tune and approve plans to create a tax incremental district. This is in reference to tax incremental district number 11, which would actually border Humboldt. So I plan on staying today to learn a little bit more. I saw that was on the agenda. I'll stick around. So I want to say that we've been having really good discussions. Northwoods Land Trust and Riverview Hall LLC, our neighbors to the west, whose property would actually be in that TID 11. The reason we've been talking so much is actually because current public access is through their property. So it's important to us to have a good relationship with them since people are going onto their property to access Humboldt. So in conclusion, I just want to state today for the public record that Northwoods Land Trust is committed to being part of the conversations revolving around potential changes to land use on areas adjacent to Humboldt, especially if those changes have the potential to adversely impact conservation values or public access to the property. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Andrew Larson?
Hi, I'm Andrew Larson, 1116 Pino Street, Rhinelander here. This is kind of just an impromptu thing here, but I am here to show my support for the Little League here in town. These little kids deserve it. It's been going for a couple years now, and I just hope we can find a way to give them what they want also, you know, so that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Meg Spretzel?
Always an adjustment. Hello. Good evening. I'm Meg Sprexel, the president of the Oneida County Fair Board. This will be the first year that the Oneida County Fair is put on independently and without monetary support from the county. It has been a challenge to turn a new leaf. This year has been a nose to the grindstone and boots on the ground effort on behalf of the Fair Board, who have worked countless volunteer hours to put this event on for the community, its families, and volunteers. Since 2009, the City of Rhinelander has supported the Oneida County Fair in putting on the fair. Truly, the fair could not exist without the city's help and support. And for its past support, we are incredibly thank you. The fair brings thousands of people to Rhinelander for the fair. The fair highlights its county seat of Rhinelander, and its benefit to the city is noticeable in so many ways. The fair cannot be put on without the support of the city. Please consider this as the topic comes up on the agenda this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Not seeing none. Okay. Mayor comments. I have no comments at this time. Regarding the consent agenda, just for everyone's clear, this is currently item A through H, which is on the back side of the page, which is a septic hauler permit for Northern Rock Septic and Hauling.
Could we remove point F under new business for mobile home parks permits, just pending some questions?
Sure.
With
So
inspections?
consent agenda is everything but item F.
I will make a motion to accept the consent agenda, except item F as presented.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Daniel, second.
Okay.
You can request something to be removed if you wanted to.
Yes.
Yes.
We just have to amend said motion, correct?
It was really hard to hear what you said.
Just have to amend said motion to remove another item from the consent agenda, correct?
You would amend the motion to remove item F, and you would say, we'd like to move to amend items F and G.
Okay. So, Mr. Anderson, since you now have the floor, is there an item you would like to amend to remove?
Can you turn your mic on? Item A.
Okay. Is there a second for the amendment?
Second.
Okay. So now we got a consent, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Amendment passes. So now the consent agenda is all but A and F. Any discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Consent agenda passes. Back to item 6A.
You turned it off.
All right. This has to do with the minutes from last meeting. And I was concerned, and still am, about the motion that was made after the closed session. And which said direct administration and legal to present the adjacent property owners the purchase of city-owned property. What present meant in that situation. And I asked that at the meeting, and Mr. Sorensen gave a few sentences of explanation which satisfied me, so I voted for it. But the gist of that was that the word present means negotiate and bring to some conclusion conveyance of these properties, or dealing with the property owners. Anyways, it's authorizing negotiation. It's not authorizing the actual conveyance. And with that understanding, I would move that the minutes be approved.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the understanding of administration. We talked about it yet today, And so that's certainly what we're doing. We don't have the legal descriptions done yet because we haven't had the surveyors done. We don't have the exact dollar amounts yet because we don't have the surveys done. But we've gone to the property owners and we've got their acquiescence. And as soon as we have the details, then we can give it to the council for final approval.
Daniel, I'll second the motion to approve the minutes with that understanding.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? 6A passes. Now we go to 6F. Mr. Jopek?
Robbie, could you come up and speak quick? Sorry. Putting you on the spot. Six F is to approve mobile home parks permits. I just want to check with you, Robbie, in inspections, just to make sure that it's out in the open. What is, I guess, the current, as far as the permit goes, what are the stipulations of us approving a permit for the current owners of the property?
As long as they're in line with all city ordinance, we can approve it. And I can't say that they're not. There's just so much property maintenance in all, if you will, the mobile home parks. The new owner of Woodland Heights, and I believe they bought Terrace and Manor, they told me that 48 hours is all they're going to allow for property maintenance issues, and then they're going to clean them up themselves and bill the resident. I would really like to see that in writing.
And so that's different from our ordinance, correct? We give a 30-day kind of
Right,
heads
we've
up.
always been given 30 days,
Okay.
and if it's something, a little lesser, we can give less time.
Historically, just over the last couple of years, how effective have they been at kind of keeping that maintained? I understand things happen, things come up, but just as far as, is the property being well maintained? Are we making sure that citizens are in healthy environments and so on, or are there any concerns on your end on that side?
Yeah, just a huge concern. I've only been here a little over a year, and I could spend 2 days to 3 days a week in those parks.
Okay. And so you just mentioned that they had given you a verbal that they would approve, or that they would pursue like a 48-hour 48 hours to rectify the situation.
Correct.
And maybe we could get that in writing with the city.
Right.
Is that something? I don't know how that would work on the administration
So the two
side.
questions I would have is, one, how long have this current group owned those parks? Because to say it's been an issue for years is unfair for someone who just purchased.
Yeah, no, they've been purchased maybe in the last 6 months.
True. And
Okay.
based on your recommendation, should we approve this as sits or no?
No, I'd like to see that in writing. If that's their new policy, and we'll help them stand behind it.
So then the question before the council is, should we amend this to hold them to a different standard than other trailer parks within the city? And that's a question for you.
From my understanding, Woodland Heights, Manor, and Terrace are all owned by the same company, and we don't have any issues in Edgewater. So it's the same owner that owns all three parks, but again, that's a new owner, and when I say it's 6 months, that's about all it is. It's recent.
From a legal point of view, you see any concern with holding two different trailer parks at different standards?
First of all, you've got to stick with the current ordinance. These applications are under the current ordinance. You can't do de facto laws. You can't change the rules after the application. So, I mean, you want to change the rules, that's fine for next year. Certainly, we can ask them to give us their rules and regulations if they got the 48-hour provision. That certainly helps us in negotiating with some of these people to clean up their spots. But I think that for purposes of the permit, that if you want to change the rules for trailer parks, that's something we should work on and should come back for next year. But you can't ask somebody that just applied and change the law after they made an application.
Mr. Barnett?
Yeah, I think that that ordinance needs to be reworked immensely, not only just for the trailer parks, but for other places around our community that have really bad living conditions. So I would be interested in making sure that ordinance is revised for next year. I guess my question would be, can we ask the owners to put that in writing now, or does our ordinance prevent that?
We can request anything you want of the owners. You just can't deny them a permit if they're living up to the application criteria in the ordinance as it currently exists. I mean, you've got these inherent rights that are there, and if you take them away, which you would have to do by ordinance, you'd have to have a public hearing, you'd have to have, you know, there's a process that would take us probably 6 months or so.
Okay.
Joe Peck moved to approve item F, approve 2022-2023 mobile home parks for the attached applicants.
Hold second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion pass.
Chris, can I make a motion to move item 9D up to right now?
Sure. So this would be discuss / approve agreement for Pioneer Park with Oneida County Fair. We'll refer to Zach for how we went so far with meetings and how we
Sure
got here.
thing. So in the past, this was a lease between the city and the county, and now that they are a nonprofit in existence on their own, we are taking a slightly different approach with the agreement, similarly to the way we contract for the use of the Little League fields and other operations within our park system. So leading up to this, we've had, 3 or 4 in-person meetings, exchanged some dialogue, using the basis of the lease, previous lease that was in existence as sort of the core convening piece here. So walking you through the lease, basically the term is for the week of the fair, so starting the Monday before, concluding the evening of the last day of the fair, for their exclusive use of Pioneer Park, though the other, like the other park amenities would remain open to the public, is my understanding at this point in time. The costs, we'll get into the fees in a minute, but essentially all of the explicit statements as to what the city and its staff will do and what needs the fair has to support its use of the park. The one thing I will amend in number 6 after receiving additional clarification from Jeremy pertains to what the garbage pickup, and I know we didn't quite connect on that detail, but essentially we're proposing it's going to be the same as previous years. It's just we have some garbage receptacles in there. We're not stating that we're going to bring in more for the fair, but so we'll just want your concurrence on that detail. The way I have it written, it's that we're actually going to do all the garbage pickup and all the garbage removal, and that's not the way it's been done in the past. So as long as we're okay, just want to make sure we'll get that language cleaned up. And then other indemnifications, insurance, liability, those types of details. Back to the fees for a minute. The calculation of the fees is based upon the existing fee schedule. We did have some discussion about sort of what their ability to pay would be with their budgetary constraints this year. And so I wrote it up, not at liberty to negotiate anything less than really what the fee schedule offers, to allow council to weigh in as to what level it will support this, and the mayor may have some thoughts too, but in effect, another item that's later on our agenda on special events fees, we'll get into this a bit further, but essentially that's the full fee allocated to the uses that they're proposing within the park. And I'm not sure if...
What's that a number, Zach?
In the lease right now, or in the use agreement, is $4,315. We had discussed something in the middle of that, I would say, something along the lines of half, being something that they could potentially afford given their current constraints. So unless I'm out of order, I'm just looking to the group to make sure there's no head nods one way or the other. But that's generally what we've been talking leading up to this point.
What have we charged them in the past?
I can't speak to that.
Maybe
they pay for
Wendy?
utilities, and that's what's proposed in this lease as it's been done. I don't have an application from them in front of me. I don't believe
Anyone from the fair would like to let us know what we charged you in the past?
It might have been negotiated between the city and the county that there wouldn't have been another charge to the county at that time.
Sure. In my experience, we We have covered the electric that is put into the park, and we take care of all of the garbage, but the city itself has not charged us a permit fee or any fees prior to today.
Thank you.
Sure.
Chris?
Steve?
The reason they would have never been charged a fee before is because there was a contract with the county, not with a separate organization. We did have a contract with the county, and there was money paid by the county. So I can look that up, or we can look that up. But understand that this would be the first time ever that the fair itself would be paying a fee, because it was always a county expense.
So are you inferring the county paid us for use of the
The
park?
county paid us, that's correct, for our services that were performed, because that's just the way it worked. It was a fair contract. It was an Oneida County Fair contract. We had it at least the 3 years I've been here. I can try and look it up for you.
If you can.
I just don't, you're not comparing apples to apples, is all I'm trying to tell you. This is a whole new thing. It's two governmental agencies swapping money versus an independent organization.
Well, what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is what if they paid normally in the past versus what we're asking them to pay this year, to see what's the difference.
Maybe Jeremy knows. I don't know off the top of my head, but I can look it up.
While we wait for that, Mr. Holt?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to accept the agreement with the provision that we waive the fee for this year.
Joe Beck second.
Any discussion? Mr. Holt?
Yeah, this is the county fair. I feel like we've had this discussion before, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like the council was fairly clear about the idea that we shouldn't be charging. We should waive this fee. It's the county fair. It brings in so much to this city. Yeah, I'm obviously in favor of waiving them.
Any more discussion? Ms. Daniel?
So basically, you're suggesting that we absorb what the county would have paid. So
For this year, yes.
this year?
For this year, because this is a new.
Because it's not the Rhinelander City Fair, it's the Oneida County Fair.
I understand that.
Okay.
And I understand that, we can't control what the county does. And it's the decisions that are made at that level. But I think for the sake of demonstrating the value of the fair to the city itself, even though it is the Oneida County Fair, I fully support waiving that fee and absorbing that cost.
I agree. But just so you know that there will be a cost to the city, because we have to pay the guys to go out and put up the barricades and pick up the trash and do all that other stuff. So I just wanted with that understanding, if we absorb that fee, we have an expense. That's around a $4,315 expense to the city. Just making sure that that's very, very clear. We're not just waiving a fee, we're absorbing an expense.
Understood.
Mr. Jopek?
Just because of the current status with it being the first year, this all being kind of uncharted waters, I would hate to see a council that is very supportive of community events and such to then turn and make something a bit more difficult to actually occur in the city. It'd seem, dare I say, hypocritical a little bit. So that's where I stand. I think for the single year, just until we know that they're on solid footing, they've got it down, we absorb that cost, and then hopefully in the future they'll be riding high and we'll be on charted waters.
I have a question for the fair. So if this were to pass, would you guys be open to naming the city as a sponsor of the fair this year?
That's definitely something I'd have to take up with the board, but I would be happy to acknowledge the city and their support on our website, on our Facebook page, as much as possible.
Cool, thank you. Not seeing any more discussion. Since the contract, that means it's a roll call vote. Clerk, take the roll.
Thomas Barnett.
Abstain.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Carrie Mikulowski,
Aye.
Thomas Kelly,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson, David Holt,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel,
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Motion passes to waive fee for the Oneida County Fair. Okay, going back to number 7. So this is an ordinance for annexation. This property had no comments by the public at the Planning Commission, so I'm looking for approval with waiving the second reading. Mr. Anderson?
I move approval of ordinance 2022-09, annexation of 1205 Chippewa Drive, PL 641, with the waiver of the second reading.
Holt, second.
Any discussion? Mr. Anderson?
Now, just to clarify for the record, this is the property they want to build the Holiday Inn on?
Correct. So it's next to the WPS building and used car dealership on the other side? No, Hodag.
Behind
Hoday
it.
Honda, yeah.
Yeah.
Honda.
Yep.
Yeah,
All those in, it has to be a roll call. Clerk, take the roll call.
Carrie Mikulowski,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel,
Aye.
Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Thomas Kelly.
Aye.
Ordinance passes. Moving on to 8. This is discuss/approve resolution 2022-14, the commercial electrical inspector and associate fee modifications. Can I have Robbie come up to give us a little more details on this? So I have 2 questions. One, what's your feelings on the change in fee schedule from what it would cost the applicant?
I'm fine with the fee schedule.
Okay. And then what's your thoughts on the additional workload on employees in the department?
If we can push it off till, with Olivia resigning, till we know where we're moving to and what we have for workers, like October, 4th quarter.
So you think like October 1st kind of a thing?
And work on getting it ready and see where we're at.
Okay. Anyone from council have questions for Mr. Anderson?
I'm having trouble understanding the additional workload idea. Somebody else has been doing the inspections, and now we're giving it to a contractor instead. How does that affect the department?
We still issue the permit. The permit still comes through the department, would get reviewed by Bear Electric and be issued through the city through our software. So that's where the additional work is. Everything else will be done by Bear Electric.
And that's all additional work that you don't do now?
Correct.
Roughly how many man hours are we talking a month, if you had to guesstimate?
I think without really counting, I think I get about 10 emails from the electrical inspector from Badgerland that does it now. So it could be 5 hours of work just issuing permits, typically, you know, in a busy time.
Okay.
Robbie, does our information systems line up with their information systems in a way that there's a form that's already built that they can plug in and everything is hunky-dory, or is there something? Okay.
No, we'd have to have that form built.
Okay.
And it would have to mirror what was in Bear's contract price-wise. That's what it would be, so they could fill it out and generate, if you will, the fee when they apply for the permit.
Hence waiting to 4th quarter, I'm assuming, so for a transfer date. Okay, I would entertain a motion of any kind. Mr. Anderson?
I'd like to move adoption of Resolution 2022-14 for commercial electrical inspection and associated fee modifications. With the change from what had been printed in the packet to change the resolved clause. You all should have received a sheet with some wording that I sent to Zach earlier, and he gave to each of you. So part of my motion then is to replace everything after the whereas clauses with this new resolved clause which has 4 parts to it. Be it resolved that city administration is authorized to negotiate a contract for commercial electrical inspections to begin October 1st, 2022, incorporating the fee schedule contained in the contractor's proposal. 2, upon receiving delegated status from Wisconsin DSPS, the city shall direct electrical plan reviews and inspections to its contractor. 3, each applicant shall then pay the fees required by the contract. 4, the city fee schedule shall be revised to correspond to the contractual fees.
Is there a second for the motion?
Daniel, second.
Any discussion? Not seeing any. Since it's a contract, clerk, take the roll call.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel,
Aye.
Carrie Michalowski,
Aye.
Thomas Kelly,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Number 9A, new business. Discuss and approve development agreement with Hodag Hospitality Group LLC. Zach?
Yeah, as a follow-up to our discussions to this point on this, as well as those that occurred last week at the development of the TIF district program or project plans, as well as district boundaries, Steve and I have worked with the development group, both this one and the next item listed here, to come up with a draft development agreement and a couple of iterations actually therein. I'll have Steve talk about it in a minute, but essentially, from the city's part, the city's commitments remain unchanged to what's already been proposed and discussed to this point. Then in the case of the Hodag Hospitality, there's a component for infrastructure build-out that Ellers is modeled around the TIF commitments, and that's just under $1 million in infrastructure costs, $905,000, as well as initial cash upon certificate of occupancy, an accelerated development incentive, and then pay-go structured following that. In both instances, both groups have agreed to a minimum increment to help finance those costs, and from our standpoint, everything is amicable. But I'll go to Steve to talk a little bit more about the guarantees that are aspects to this agreement at this time.
Yeah, so what we've done in the contract is we've also put in provisions that would protect the city with personal guarantees and also with security into the property, and that our developers agreement would be recorded prior to the agreement they would have with any financial or banking group, so that anybody that would pick up the property because of foreclosure or failure to complete would also be picking up subject to the developers agreement. So I'm very confident that the way this is established, and given the study and the work that ARIS has done, we're in good shape. Now, we don't have the contract signed yet, and I'm pretty much the one that's written it, so I can guarantee you it's, if I were going to review it myself from the outside, I'd say it's written very much in favor of the city. So I presume that there'll be some suggestions of some variances. We did take away, there was a requirement of a letter of credit. They were talking about the cost of money, and they said, fine, you want to put personal guarantees? We're okay with that as long as we've got the project itself guaranteeing the work. We know from the study that there is a need in the city of Rhinelander for housing of this type, transient housing. So it's not like this is a lot of risk, and it's not a lot of risk because it's being built by two companies that have reputations already. In other words, Holiday and Name, IHG, and cobblestone are well-known in the state of Wisconsin, have very, very successful projects throughout Wisconsin. So this is one of those projects that everything, the stars are aligning so far. Now, if they try to pull out some of the provisions, we may get nervous, but so far. It also does provide for additional development opportunities because it does put it into the TIF district. And as you heard tonight, there's a possibility of other people that could piggyback on this TIF district because this in and of itself could be a TIF driver, which would allow for other economic expansion during the period of the TIF because we're allowed to move the districts of the TIF also. So this is one of those rare TIFs where it looks like it's paid for in advance and we're not really giving out the majority of the money until it's after already up working and we're starting to see the money flow because the money will really be flowing from the increment that they are increasing the tax bases by. That increment will really pay for any advancements we make to them in addition to providing us with ultimately a much bigger tax base. Other questions I can answer.
What are you actually looking for tonight? Approval of the agreement or?
No, we're approval. We don't have the ultimate. We're just telling you tonight that we have the development agreement. We're moving forward. And if you don't think we should be moving forward, you better speak up because this railroad train is out of the station and it's going. So,
Ms. Daniel?
Do you know when we might see the development agreement in hard copy? Is that coming up soon?
I would suggest, given their review, that by the next council meeting, you'll probably see a development agreement.
Okay.
Maybe not the development agreement.
Okay.
I would think next month you would see the development agreement.
Okay, so we're just discussing today, we're not approving then, because we can't actually see the agreement.
Yeah, because they really haven't had a chance to go through it.
Okay.
Their investors went through it, but their attorney hasn't gone through it.
Okay, just clarifying.
And then on that note of next steps, the July 11th council meeting will be the formal adoption by the council of the approval of the TIF district creation. And then subsequent to that, the joint review board will then take its action. So there's a couple of interim steps everybody is taking together on this. So it's not a critical item for tonight, but as Steve said, we've gone through some discussions back and forth, but we haven't gotten their final concurrence as of this meeting's agenda.
And Steve, I'm guessing your comments reply to both 9A and 9B? For the
Yes,
two different,
yes.
Okay.
The second project, which is the cobblestone project, is a little less extensive and probably moving a little faster just because of the nature of where it's located. It already has a lot of the utilities and the roads, and whereas the other one is going to take more infrastructure. Everything we've had so far has been good. We expected delays that might come from the department, highway department stuff. That's going to work out fine. With the annexation we worried about, that worked out fine. So it's a slow train, but it's moving. So, and as you know, once a train gets moving, it's hard to stop it.
Any discussion for either 9A or B? Mr. Anderson?
The development agreements that you've been working on, are they essentially the same as what was presented at the meetings last week?
Yes. Yeah, it'd only be tweaking. Otherwise, they'd be the same.
Okay, not seeing any more discussion, but moving on to 9C. I'd like to call Rachel up from HR. So what have you been up to?
Not much at all. I'm just kidding. So Zach sent a letter out to council. We would like to request information and solicit proposals for brokerage services. The city has utilized Cottingham and Butler for over 3 years, and we have repeatedly heard concerns from employees during the engagement meetings that we've been having in regard to service as well as lack of service, their availability and presence. So we're looking simply to ask for information and solicit other brokers to see what might be available out there. A final determination on whatever that information brings to us would not affect healthcare coverages, deductibles, and that sort of thing. That process is completely separate and held annually during the review. So I just wanted to reassure folks of that. We are simply looking at brokerage services.
What do you suggest would be the outcome by doing this?
I personally would be looking for a brokerage service that could offer better services for the city.
Any question? Mr. Anderson?
It certainly sounds like a good idea to me to go through this process every few years anyway, but especially if there have been a lot of concerns about the present one, certainly makes sense.
Right.
And I suppose it holds the current group accountable, so that way if we could get a better product, why not?
I think so too. And like I said, 3 years, it's probably due.
Okay, not seeing any more public comment. We will move on to letter E, which is the fee schedule. So this is something we talked about for a couple weeks. I met with the city clerk as well as the city administrator. The intent of this is to make and when this refers to fee schedule in more special events type category, and the intent of this was to simplify the process and make it easier, or we're not nickel and diming a nonprofit or just anyone trying to put on an event, from a parade to like an all-class reunion to anything like that in the city. First, I refer to the clerk, since this involves you quite aggressively. What's your thoughts on the current proposal?
So I definitely think it will simplify hosting special events as well as encouraging groups to come here. And it definitely just works on simplifying our fee schedule and kind of making a separate category for special events, which I think will be a lot easier for people who are wanting to host a special event that may not have held something in the past, that are coming in completely green to this. I think it'd be a lot easier for them to get started.
Anything you would disagree with on the current proposal?
No, I think we hashed out some stuff pretty well.
Cool. Any discussion by council?
Just checking in under barricade, flasher, candlestick cones, $10 per item. As far as just simplifying, I don't have necessarily a resolution, but in any of my event planning I've ever done, I've never had a set number of cones that I might need. Is there any, I guess, what does the request look like for those items? Like, do you just ask for a bulk number, or what does that look like?
So in the past, each one of those were price point differently.
Okay.
So a candlestick versus size of cone was all different price points. So this was the starting point to simplify. Do you want 50 items? It's 50 times the cost versus 10 at this price, 10 at that price.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, we have in stock from that.
And they can request them in bunches, like
Right, and I would say that staff would provide some guidance on, if you're going to close this block area, you're going to need a minimum of this many, and so that's where that number would derive from.
Mr. Anderson?
It looks like we're eliminating any fee for exclusive use of the park. And to me, that sounds like a big deal. I'd like some explanation of why we wouldn't want some kind of fee for that.
So and it's not really stated really good on here, to be honest. So the way we looked at it is we receive fees from parks when they rent shelters. So exclusive use for a park should be dictated on the total amount of fees we could collect from pavilions. So a Park A has 2 pavilions. So if you want Park A, it would be the cost of 2 pavilions. So it's not really to make money. It's more to balance out what we would have if, the Johnson family and the Smith family wanted to rent said pavilions, since they're losing access if the entire park is in use.
You do raise a good point, and I think part of what we're also stating by eliminating the fee is, if somebody approaches a city, private, not-for-profit, for-profit, doesn't matter, that there's a benefit to said organization to have exclusive access, that would warrant a use agreement then versus a special event. So it'll force the parties to have a bit more discussion and hopefully planning. In the case of the fair, we've got personnel costs, both in the lead up to it, but also police presence. Some events might have fire and EMS standby charges. So I think, again, we're trying to force those conversations to happen. 800 was an arbitrary number that I don't know if there was any source of. In our discussions, at least to my knowledge, there wasn't anything really derived from that. So, you know, there likely would be an exclusive use of park fee, and it may be simply the 2 pavilions that exist in the park, because you rent them, you technically have access to the park. But if we're prohibiting the public and it's a private use, that's a whole nother discussion, I think, in negotiation.
And this is for Zach and Austin. I'm assuming the county fair is the only one who currently takes advantage of entire park.
Lights of the Northwoods would be another event that happens. It's over a series of dates, so that also warrants a whole nother level of discussions, I would say. And I'm not certain how they've been treated in the past, but trying to be as consistent as possible.
And just to make it completely clear, so even if, you know, they choose whatever options they want here, this still goes to the fire department, police department, and both of those chiefs have their authority to add on any personnel or equipment fees they deem fit based on size of the event or the type of event, such as fireworks or bonfire. You know, having a fire truck might be useful. Hopefully not, but...
We also get questions, I understand, from the clerk's office perspective on refunds and cancellations, and presently there hadn't been a policy in existence, so I probably should have bolded that between 3.04 and 4.05, the reservation refund cancellation policy.
You said there wasn't anything prior to this in there?
No,
Okay.
so, yeah.
This is just what we're going off of.
Yeah. And the idea there is if it's booked up and somebody cancels last minute, we kind of prohibited the public from an ample opportunity to come and reserve that shelter potentially.
Any other questions or tweaks someone would like to make? I would entertain a motion to approve the updated fee schedule.
And then I would just ask that you include an effective date in the motion.
Oh, so I would suggest we do January 1st. That way it gives people a couple months to get used to it, and then anyone planning their event knows the changes. The last page in your council packet does show a couple examples from like All Class Reunion, what they currently pay for this schedule versus what it would change to. We put Oktoberfest on there, and we also put Ridiculous Days, which is a downtown event. So for most startup events, it is a significant, almost 40% cost savings from an event point of view.
Is there any concern that us changing this and making it effective January 1st will, I mean, Ridiculous Day still coming up yet, right? Oktoberfest, Rhinelander, are those organizations going to be a little concerned that they're missing out on this fee schedule for this year?
I can speak for Oktoberfest, and I personally do not care.
Yeah, yours is...
That might be part of the reason. Full disclosure, I'm not getting a discount either on Oktoberfest.
Yeah. So I guess I with the January 1st thing, I'm concerned that, you know, these other groups that are trying to hold these events that we're not, we're giving them a heads up, but their event this year won't see that. If we know the fee schedule is going to be this, why not just make it sooner so that they're not paying that fee amount?
It's really all the forms. We've also built some form of budgetary expectation revenue-wise this year, so we're going to have to adjust that for next year. It's going to take us some time to get everything updated. I know we've got a good start on the forms from previous discussion on special events, but that would be a couple reasons.
Mm-hmm. What would be the clerk's suggestion as a start date?
I would definitely say January 1st, just because we can't really spring these on people who've already kind of budgeted their events and everything like that.
I will make a motion to accept the fee schedule with a start date of January 1st, 2023.
Is there a second? Okay. So since there's money involved, clerk, take the roll call.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Thomas Kelly.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Abstain.
Gerald Anderson.
Aye.
Karen Mikulowski.
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Fee schedule approved. I'm striking number 10 since there is nothing to go into closed sessions for. We're going to 11, which is future agenda items. Any requests for future agenda items?
Just to let everybody know, I did look up the contract for the, when the fair was with the county, and there is no fee that the county paid to the city, but the county was responsible for the cost of the electricity, cleaning up the facility, In other words, they covered all the cost, well, that's what the contract says. Well, Tom, I just pulled up the contract. And they may have paid that, pushed that cost onto the Fair Board. I can't say that's not true. Our contract was with the county, and that was part of our contract with the county. Yes, the county may have pushed it onto the Fair Board, which I'm